The Nancy Guthrie case, institutional friction, and the puppet master. Welcome to this explainer. We're actually going to bypass the usual pleasantries today because the details emerging from the Nancy Guthrie investigation are, well, they're as complex as they are startling. We're breaking down exclusive insights from top criminal profilers, looking at this unprecedented jurisdictional friction between law enforcement agencies, and doing a deep psychological dive into that suspect caught on camera. Okay, let's get right into it.
Just hit pause and let that statement sink in for a second. The person we see at the front door could be dead. Now, this isn't some random internet rumor. This is a chilling insight coming directly from the world's most highly regarded retired FBI criminal profilers analyzing this exact case. And it completely shifts how we view everything. For months, the public has been absolutely fixated on that man captured on the Ring doorbell camera, right? Assuming he holds the key to solving the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. But behavioral experts suggest we might literally be looking at a ghost, a disposable asset who was eliminated shortly after the crime went down.
So, that brings us to the massive mystery at the center of our explainer today. Who is the puppet master? Top investigators are increasingly leaning into this theory that the highly visible suspect at the front door was not acting alone. Actually, it's more like he was just a pawn in a much larger, much darker game controlled by someone entirely out of frame. But before we can even begin to profile this mastermind, we have to look at the very real friction that occurred behind the scenes during the absolute most critical window of this investigation.
Section 1, the institutional friction, focusing on the crucial first 96 hours. Okay, let's dive into this. The first 48 to 96 hours of literally any missing persons investigation are absolutely vital. It's when the trail is the hottest and the evidence is the freshest. But, according to recent statements, those critical first few days in the Nancy Guthrie case were marked by some pretty significant institutional friction between federal and local authorities. So we have two extremely different accounts of those crucial early hours. On one hand, we've got these new claims from FBI Director Kash Patel. He states that the FBI was explicitly kept out of the investigation for 4 full days by the local sheriff. Patel even claims he had a fixed-wing aircraft waiting on standby, ready to fly critical DNA evidence through the night directly to the FBI's world-renowned lab in Quantico. But then, on the flip side, we have the official response from Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. The sheriff's office maintains that a member of the FBI task force was actually notified and present at the scene immediately. They state that local leadership provided immediate oversight and that decisions regarding evidence processing were completely collaborative based on operational needs. Now, we are absolutely not here to take sides, but mapping out these conflicting statements really reveals the immense jurisdictional complexities that can and do complicate high-stakes real-world investigations. To really understand the practical outcome of this friction, let's trace the journey of a single crucial piece of evidence, a rootless hair found inside Nancy Guthrie's home on night 1. Because the local sheriff opted to use their preferred private lab in Florida instead of Patel's standby FBI plane, this physical evidence was initially sent all the way across the country to Florida. It was only months later that it was finally transferred to the FBI lab in Quantico. This timeline shows exactly how differing agency protocols physically direct the flow of an investigation. For us tracking this at home, it just shows how simple logistical choices can literally delay answers for months.
So, while the agencies are sorting out the chain of custody and jurisdictional boundaries, we have to ask, what is the evidence actually telling us about the crime itself? Because while that DNA is being processed, the behavioral evidence left at the scene is already painting an incredibly detailed picture.
Section 2, the behavioral breakdown, masterminds and amateurs. This brings us to a fascinating behavioral breakdown provided by seasoned FBI profilers. When they look at the suspect caught on that doorbell camera, they do not see a criminal mastermind. They see a complete amateur. And to understand the dynamic between the mastermind and the amateur, we have to talk about the catalyst that breaks these kinds of cases wide open.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer magnitude of this number. $1,200,000. This is the reward currently sitting on the table for information leading to an arrest. And in the world of criminal investigations, this specific amount of money is an absolute gravitational force. According to retired FBI agent Maureen O'Connell, this isn't some $25,000 reward that someone is going to blow through in a week. This is life-changing money. And that fundamentally alters the psychology of everyone involved. It breaks deep, deep criminal loyalties. I mean, if you know a secret, $1 million makes it very hard to keep your mouth shut. More importantly, it turns any living co-conspirators into massive liabilities for the puppet master. So the crucial point is analyzing exactly why this guy is such a liability. Just look at his behavior. Profilers note his actions were incredibly performative, almost extra. He's wearing a mask, double gloves, what looks like sweatpants under his jeans, blatantly displaying a gun, and just awkwardly grabbing shrubbery. And let's be honest, wearing full sweatpants under jeans in sweltering heat is a completely bizarre choice. Agent O'Connell noted that he literally looked high, like someone who had to smoke weed just to calm his nerves before doing a job he really didn't want to do. He acted exactly like a hired distraction, meant to draw all the attention to the front of the house, while the real crime happened somewhere else.
And this brilliantly illustrates the chilling elimination theory, supported by multiple profilers. Step 1. The puppet master meticulously plans the crime. Step 2. An unsophisticated amateur is hired to handle the cameras and provide a distraction. Step 3. To ensure absolute silence, especially with $1.2 million on the line, the amateur is eliminated. As profilers theorize, the mastermind might have simply told this hired gun to meet up on an encrypted app to get paid and then killed him within 24 hours of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance.
Part 3, the human cost. Looking at victimology and trauma. Because as we analyze the cold, hard mechanics of the crime, we absolutely cannot lose sight of the profound human cost. The ripple effects of this crime have heavily impacted Nancy's family, bringing this intense and sometimes pretty unforgiving public spotlight, especially onto her daughter, Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie.
Let's just ground ourselves for a second with this powerful framing from retired Agent O'Connell. She was absolutely gutted and broken by this. Do not expect more from her than any other victim. The public is often so impatient, projecting their own expectations onto high-profile figures. But we have to remember, Savannah is a grieving daughter dealing with an active, horrific trauma, all while balancing a highly demanding job, a marriage, and young kids. There has been so much online scrutiny regarding her recent silence and her return to work. But experts emphasize that her silence is not suspicious in the slightest. It's actually a standard trauma response. Furthermore, she's operating under the strict guidance of a professional security team. Laying low, avoiding the cruelty of online comments, and prioritizing her family is exactly what the professionals advise. What you should take away from this is a reminder to pause our own judgment. This family is in an agonizing state of limbo, navigating unimaginable grief without the closure of any real answers.
Section 4, not a cold case. Let's move to the Focus Task Force and see how this builds into the current state of the investigation. Because of the public silence from the family and the lack of immediate arrests, there's this lingering fear out there that the investigation has stalled. But investigators are adamant this is absolutely not a cold case. The public might lack patience, but law enforcement is famously patient. They are entirely used to running toward what others run away from. Behind the scenes, a highly consolidated, razor-focused task force is doing some incredible, rigorous forensic work. It's been described as a giant industrial washing machine of data. They are actively processing an initial 30,000 tips, with more pouring in every single day. They are quietly tracking credit card statements and financial withdrawals. They're hunting down IP addresses linked to questionable communications and constantly monitoring the social media footprints of potential persons of interest. You see, a smaller, highly focused team of experts debating and hashing out evidence is often far more effective than a massive, scattered search. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Renowned profiler Jim Fitzgerald has recommended that investigators scour up to 10 years of Savannah Guthrie's emails and her security team's correspondence. Why? Because the puppet master might not be someone Nancy even knew personally. It might be someone who knew of her, perhaps someone with a bizarre, one-sided fixation on her daughter who realized they just couldn't get through directly. So as law enforcement meticulously traces every single digital footprint, the big question remains, will this painstaking digital spiderweb finally lead us out of the darkness and directly to the puppet master? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. We will see you next time.